They sold you a lie about what it takes to build wealth, and you bought it. Not just a minor deception, but a massive structural fraud designed to keep you exhausted, permanently visible, and fundamentally poor. They told you to network, to grind in public, to stay connected, to respond to every message, and to make sure your name is always circulating in the room. None of them will tell you the single most dangerous truth about modern success, because this truth requires you to isolate yourself from the very culture that is currently extracting your energy. The reason you are not where you want to be financially is not because you lack talent. It is not the economy. It is your chronic, uninterrupted availability. You have constructed an internal architecture that is completely open to the world. Your attention, your focus, and your daily frequency are available for anyone to access, manipulate, and consume. You are constantly responding to the cheap dopamine of the crowd, operating within a timeline dictated by people who do not care if you succeed or fail. Every time you engage in the endless microtransactions of social noise, every notification you check, every superficial interaction you maintain to feel relevant, you are broadcasting a frequency of profound availability. And the market, like a predator, senses this. It senses a man whose internal theater is constantly performing for an audience that pays him absolutely nothing. It sees a man who is reachable, and in the modern economy, to be reachable is to be consumed. What you are about to receive is not another set of productivity hacks. It is not a time management technique designed to help you juggle more noise. What you are about to receive is the blueprint for a permanent structural change, an absolute extraction of your psychology from the public grid. You are going to learn how to become economically and psychologically untouchable, a system of total removal where your energy is no longer public property. By the end of this, you will understand why the men who actually build empires do not participate in the noise. They initiate the ghost protocol. They disappear. And when they return as the architects of their own reality. To understand the necessity of the ghost protocol, you must first dissect the anatomy of the trap you currently occupy. Modern poverty is no longer defined simply by the absence of capital. It is defined by the permanent fragmentation of your attention. You have been placed on a continuous drip of manufactured urgency, operating under the illusion that visibility is equivalent to value. The culture has convinced you that if you are not constantly seen, if you are not reacting to the daily cycle of noise, you will cease to exist. This is not an accident. It is a precise mechanism of extraction. Visibility in its common form is not power. It is bleeding. When you remain perpetually accessible, you are handing the remote control of your nervous system to an economy that profits directly from your anxiety and distraction. You have inadvertently constructed an internal theater where you constantly rehearse your relevance, measuring your worth against metrics designed to keep you addicted. You are spending your most critical resource, your deep, unmodified focus, negotiating with fiction. You calculate how you are perceived by a crowd that holds absolutely zero authority over your financial reality. Look at your daily operational frequency. It is reactive. You wake up and immediately surrender your timeline to the demands, messages, and emergencies of others. You confuse frantic motion with actual momentum. Because your interior architecture is so porous, so easily breached by the external world, you cannot sustain the prolonged, unbroken periods of deep work required to build genuine leverage. Your mind has been surgically trained to crave the interruption. You think you are grinding, but you are merely twitching. You are broadcasting a frequency of profound desperation, And the market does not reward desperation. It consumes it. The men who remain permanently trapped at the bottom are those who refuse to close the door. They believe that if they just exert more effort within the noise, they will eventually rise above it. But you cannot outwork a structural deficit. You cannot build a financial fortress on terrain that is left open to continuous public invasion. The trap is not that you are failing to work hard enough. The trap is that you are actively participating in a game designed to bleed you dry. To build anything of undeniable magnitude, the participation must end. To break the cycle of extraction, you must execute the first phase of the structural shift, the complete withdrawal of your attention from the public grid. This is not about managing your schedule or carving out 30 minutes of focus in a polluted environment. It is about a radical, permanent redesign of your interior architecture. You must become economically invisible to the noise. When you stop feeding the algorithm of constant availability, the psychological leverage that others held over your focus simply collapses. The first step of this protocol requires you to sever the psychological tether that ties your self-worth to reaction. You must stop treating your mind as a public utility. Every time a notification pings, an external demand arises, or a market fluctuation triggers an emotional spike, you are leaking capital from your attention economy. The man who cannot remain silent while the world screams is a man who can easily be managed. To build leverage, you must cultivate a state of deliberate isolation, not as a temporary retreat, but as a permanent operating system. You step back so far from the superficial noise that the trivial urgencies of the crowd lose the ability to register on your nervous system. This withdrawal creates a terrifying void for the undisciplined mind. In that silence, the cheap dopamine disappears, and you are left face to face with the reality of your current output. Most men run back to the noise because they cannot tolerate the weight of absolute silence. But the silence is where the foundation of real wealth is actually poured. When you remove your attention from the trivial, your cognitive bandwidth floods back into your control. You stop negotiating with the market's demands and begin dictating your own terms. You do not announce this withdrawal, you do not post about your retreat, and you do not explain your absence to the people who profited from your constant accessibility. You simply vanish from their frequency. The world will continue its frantic motions. The crowd will continue chasing shadows, but you will operate from a sealed vault of sustained, unbroken concentration. By closing the door on the trivial, you make room for the monumental. 99% of the men reading this will feel the weight of what has been delivered. There will be a moment, genuine and unmistakable, where absolute financial independence and psychological autonomy feel within reach. And then, with a consistency that borders on mechanical, they will return to their notifications. They will crawl back to the noise they swore they would abandon, offering their attention to a market that feeds on their weakness. They will return not because they are weak, but because transformation at this depth requires the daily private practice of starvation, starving the public self to feed the sovereign reality. The 1% will go silent. They will go to work. They will install the ghost protocol as an unyielding daily operation until the frequency of who they are matches completely the wealth and power they are capable of commanding. The crowd will continue to reach for the mechanisms that used to work, only to find the door locked, the timeline abandoned, and the target gone. You will not be there. You will have already transcended the grid. Subscribe. Not because this channel delivers content, but because this channel builds the one thing no market crash can touch and no external circumstance can compromise: The interior architecture of a man who cannot be reached and cannot be bought. The ghost protocol is not a wealth strategy. It is the operating system of the untouchable. The cold work continues,